Good morning, everyone. I welcome you for the first panel discussion of the day of 17th World Education Summit and Award 2020. I am Dr. Chandrakanta Pathak, Principal and CEO of HVB Global Academy, Marine Drive, Mumbai. I am in this field since last 36 years. That's what is my brief introduction. Our topic for the discussion is future-proofing school learning ecosystem, leveraging innovation to reskilling. Dear friends, good education standards are those that are consistent with the challenges that the society is likely to face in the future. And that is why we say get future ready. This is necessary to ensure that youth of the country is adequately equipped to survive and thrive in the face of these challenges. One of such challenges we are facing today. However, a brief reflection shows the standards and imperatives that govern the educational system in our country have largely been stagnant and have now become out of step with the demands of the challenges we face. You are aware that the NEP 2020 has been introduced after more than 3 decades. Relevant skills such as creative, critical thinking, complex problem solving, social skills, relevant skills such as creative, problem solving, etc., that are universal and cannot be automated simply do not find any place in the current teaching learning practice prevalent in the Indian education system. As a result, the graduates fresh out of the colleges are not able to find a place for themselves in the job market as they are simply not equipped with the appropriate skills. This is the root of the phenomenon of unemployment and underemployment that ails our country. And this in turn aggravates the already stark socio-economic disparity, lowers the standard of living, and threatens social stability and undermines the prestige of the country in the world. Future-proofing the school learning ecosystem, which is our topic for the day, it requires to address this glaring inadequacy of the Indian school education. This would require complete overhauling of the Indian education system as the NEP 2020 seeks to do. For this, education standards need to be revised, teaching methodologies need to be reformulated, and the ethos of teaching and learning needs to be reimagined for the entire country. However, as we know, the size, diversity, and disparity that characterize the country make this an impossible project for any government to successfully undertake alone. Change on such a large scale requires cooperation to successfully undertake public and private institutions and agencies, both small and large, that collectively constitute the education system of the country. This puts into perspective the importance of discussions such as one for which we have gathered today. Such discussions will help us better understand the complexity of the challenges, refine our ideas, and synergize our efforts to accomplish and share goal, which is modernizing the Indian education system and restoring its relevance. With these thoughts, I welcome my panelists And let me directly move to Mr. Prabodh Rajan. Before we can start the change, the education system, we must first definitely identify and eradicate the cultural norms, practices, and mindsets that prevent us from adopting novel and improved teaching learning methodologies. So, sir, in your experience, what are some of these cultural norms, practices, and mindsets that need to be parked from the psyche of stakeholders in the Indian education system? Mr. Prabodh Rajan, stage is yours now.
Can I just? Okay. Good morning to all, and thank you, Dr. Pathak. Maybe I'll just introduce myself as well. My name is Prajod Rajan there, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Eurokids International. We run a chain of preschools in this country, and we run a chain of schools, K-12 schools as well. So we run both ICSE, CBSE, and Cambridge formats, and we serve the needs of children right from 2 years of age to about 18 years of age. So that's what we do. I'm an education entrepreneur. I'd like to call myself that. I'm not an educationist like you, Dr. Pathak. I'm actually more an education entrepreneur.
But sir, you are the best person on the panel because you deal with 2 years to 18 years. So you can highlight these questions very well.
No, so do my other very esteemed panelists as well, Raghav as well, in that sense. So and I've been in this segment for about 2 decades. It's been an effort since 2001. That's a brief about me. Now, I guess this pandemic, in that sense, has really there's a quote by Lenin which I really love, and I keep saying that quote again and again. And that quote is about saying there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. This is exactly what has happened to the education segment per se there, and clearly no one had anticipated this kind of a disruption per se there. And you spoke about really mindsets, practices, what are the things that we need to change. In fact, Dr. Pathak, if you ask me, all of us have been forced to change, because the big question that needed to be asked, and I've been asking myself the same question, that is change ever possible? For the last 200 years, the education system, which is whether it is the K-12 or the higher education, has been going through the same process, right? Fit for purpose for the industrialized age. And when the information age came by, none of us knew how to change. The first question that everyone wanted to ask was, is change even possible? But given the pandemic situation, I can say for sure that absolutely change is possible. We've done this. All of us, as let's say education operators, practitioners, have actually gone through an absolute sea change. And one of the main, let me just say, I think the main constituent, which is actually the teachers, our teachers, which I really believe are the fulcrum of our education system, they are the ones who actually exhibited such great propensity for change. And I really think sometimes, and we keep speaking about many of our healthcare workers as heroes and the rest per se. I actually think that our educators are also one of the heroes of this pandemic per se. The manner in which they rose up to this challenge per se, to be able to offer what I call as uninterrupted learning for our students. So whether it was a teacher in a small village or whether it was an educator in a school in Mumbai, I think that really teachers have really risen to this cause. And that came from, if you ask me, a big mindset change, which has been going around for quite some time, of saying that the teacher really needs to be not the person on the stage, right? But somebody as a guide by the side. I think that really has come to the fore. Teachers have really proven to be really very adaptable. I think the change is very possible. I'm actually very hopeful of change that can come by. Our NEP, you mentioned about the NEP 2020 that has come to bear now after 3 decades. I think it's an intent in the right direction, but clearly there has to be a lot to be done as far as the execution is concerned. So it's a well-intentioned policy document. What needs to be done is to be able to execute it. And I guess one of the mindsets, and we spoke about that in the saying, what kind of mindset we need to change. I think the mindset about the approach towards private education providers also needs to change from a regulator standpoint. And I think that's a significant change that needs to happen. I don't think that the objects as, let's say, conceptualized in the NEP document, in the policy, you could meet without the help of private participation. And I think that all of us, I'm saying, I probably speak on behalf of my other panelists as well. I say that all of us need to contribute to be able to make the objects of NEP possible. So clearly, I think the mindset that I would urge probably the regulators, the government to probably change is the mindset of how they look at private participation, which is basically private participation in the education system. So whether it is preschools, whether it is K to 12, whether it is the higher education institutions, I think view us truly as partners being able to make the change or the objects that is possible there. And that really, I think, is the mindset change, Dr. Pathak, that I think we should have to be able to realize the objects of NEP 2020. I kind of want to just also make a point probably on practices per se there. And I know that one is about mindset, but the other is about the practices per se. I guess there is so much that we now speak about, right, in terms of 21st century skills, the way that rote memorization is now over. Now, the true point I think we should remember is that we moved now from a industrialized age to an information age. And in the information age, information and knowledge is truly democratized, which means that anyone with connectivity and device currently can access information and can construct knowledge. In such a situation, how we teach within the classrooms, including what we teach, will need to go through a change. And there is no two things about it. I think we'll fool ourselves if we were to believe what we teach and how we teach should not change in the information age. That really, I guess, are about the practices that I think will go through a sea change. But as far as the adoption of technology is concerned, I'm more hopeful than ever for the sector than I was in January 2020. So in January 2020, I was probably not as hopeful. But now when I see in December 2020, I can say, at least for myself, that I am more hopeful than ever about the adoption of technology by our schools. And I guess our teachers, our parents, and our students in that order have absolutely surprised us in the way that they have adapted to this change. There are many things that we will learn from this, which will be very valuable for the future. I'll probably stop at that.
Thank you, Mr. Prajot Rajan, for your valuable comments. The pandemic has made us to realize once again that change is the only permanent thing in this world, nothing else. Yes, DQ, that is digital quotient, we are living in that age. And definitely what you have said, that the public and private partnership, because the hidden talents are there and even the remote areas, the global award for the teacher has gone to a Jila Parishad school. So we all have to look for the talent and have to make sure that the resources are available, and the private and government partnership is the key to implement NEP 2020 successfully. I would like to move to the next point, to my another elite panelist, Mr. Raghav Podar. Critical to successfully restructuring the education system is retraining teachers and equipping them with tools of modern pedagogy. So what type of teacher retraining programs we would need to introduce to bring about the kinds of changes we are advising here?
Yes,
Mr.
thank
Podar.
Thank you for that wonderful question. Namaste to everyone watching here. My sincere belief is a country's educational system is strongly and directly proportional to the quality of its teachers. You asked me about retraining. I'll get to retraining second. Before that, we need to be able to attract the best minds of our country, the best talent of our country into the teaching profession. You go into a B.Ed room when a room full of B.Ed aspirants have joined, and you ask them, why did you choose to become a teacher? Or maybe you get applications for jobs and you ask people, why did you choose to become a teacher? And they'll say, after I got married, my in-laws told me that it'll be easy. You go and spend some time with the children, not a corporate type job where you'll have to work till late. Or, go and spend some time with children. It'll be easier. That's not what teaching is. You cannot be attracting those people into teaching as a last case scenario that I didn't get into this job, or it'll be an easier job. That's why I took teaching. Teaching is not an easy job. Teachers literally have the future of the country in their hands. Now, people talk about Finland. Finland being one of the top performing education systems of the world. Everyone is looking up to Finland and trying to get the best practices. I've studied the Finnish system of education at length over the last 5-7 years. Sat in the National Ministry of Education, spoken to them, sat in B.Ed colleges, sat inside staff rooms, inside classrooms. And I was speaking to some teachers and the educationists out there. And I said, oh, y'all must be the highest paid profession. That's why y'all have the best teachers. They said, no, we're not the highest paid. People think Finland has the highest paid teachers. According to the OECD countries, it's somewhere in the average. So it's not one of the highest paid professions. So then how come it's the most desirable profession? They say it's harder to become a teacher in Finland than it is to become a doctor or a lawyer. If you look at about 30-35 years ago, where Finland was as an education system, it was not doing that well. What changed in about 1990 or 1980 is the National Ministry of Education decided to make teaching as a profession, one, the most desirable and the most difficult and revered. By difficult, what I mean is only 10%, 1 out of every 10 people who tries to become a teacher, who tries to get into their B.Ed college, gets admitted into that B.Ed college. So that is how the filtration process works. And you end up getting the best minds, the best talent of the country into teaching. Of course, it's also the most revered, respected, and dignified profession. India has a very rich culture and legacy and heritage of Guru Deva Bhava, Acharya Deva Bhava, where we really look at our teachers as our gods. Unfortunately, though, in the degradation of time, teachers have now not been looked up with that much of respect or reverence as they deserve. So I would once again like to advocate here that we must bring back the reverence, dignity, respect with the teaching profession and get and attract the best minds and talent of the country into the teaching profession. Now, what is the role of the educator in the 21st century? You asked me about training and retraining of the existing block of teachers. Yes, it's extremely important. And even the CBSE and other boards have really gone into depth of trying to get more trained teachers. It's a very good idea, very good initiative. And so the CBSE started the COEs, the Center of Excellence Trainings. And what happened? You find that principals have now started pressing down on the teachers that you have to have at least 4 trainings a month, 4 trainings a year, because it's going to come into your affiliation inspection process and all of that. And so now you have teachers who attend these just to get a tick mark in that Excel spreadsheet. Yes, I have attended. training and retraining is not about filling a box on an Excel spreadsheet. It's not for the tick mark that you have attended it. You have to have passion, and what you're learning, you have to actually get something. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing it in a redundant manner. Even if you're attending a training session, but your brain is outside thinking about something else, your purpose there is of no use. So just getting those training sessions needs to change, and that will start with building passion and building a desire into each teacher of, I want to learn more, I want to better myself, I want to improve myself. So it needs to start with mindset changes. What is the role of the educator in the 21st century? Is it just to impart knowledge? No, because education is not a transactional phenomenon. It's not only about transacting curriculum. The role of the educator now has moved, as Prajot said, from the sage on the stage to a guide on the side, from being that gatekeeper, security guard of knowledge, to being a facilitator of learning. With automation, technology, and now the Industrial Revolution 4.0, we don't need our students to be second-class robots, but instead be first-class humans. What are the traits that are inherent to humans, which no technology can replace or do a better job of? We all know that technology can easily deliver content, but it's only a human teacher that can inspire, encourage, and spark that imagination, inquiry, and curiosity inside a child's brain. So please bring back to all the educationists watching here, let's make the Guru Deva Bhava, Acharya Deva Bhava a reality again. Let's attract the best talent of the country into the teaching profession, and let's make training and retraining truly passionate and something that teachers want to do rather than just filling a box on an Excel spreadsheet.
Thank you, Mr. Poda. I'm touched by your views because I'm also in the same field. Whatever you have said is 100% correct. We need to bring back the respect for our teachers, and to regain that, our teachers also have to work hard. It's vice versa. You were talking about Finland education system. I'm pleased to tell you that not only I visited recently during lockdown, I enrolled myself even for online training from there. And what I will give you that even the teachers are respected so much that even if principal wants to move into a classroom there, has to take prior permission from the teacher. That kind of liberty the people are given. So the respect is the key component. And at the same time, I believe our teachers who are used to this monotonous kind of thing, blackboard, chalk and board method, they have to unlearn what they are doing till today, and they have to relearn and have to be a part as a partner with the students as a learner to achieve the desirable goal. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to move to my next panelist, Mr. Anirudh Gupta. So creating a pool of adequately trained teachers at a national scale is going to present difficult logistical challenges given the diversity and disparities inherent in the Indian society. These challenges include shortage of qualified, trained teachers, trainers, funding, creating social awareness, etc. So my question to you is, what role could individual education institutions, NGOs, government agencies, etc. play in overcoming these challenges?
Thank you, Ms. Pathak. I think, while we are all looking to bring a paradigm shift in the way we perceive education, the way we think of education, and looking ahead, the way we want the education to be, and the need to align the education to the needs of 21st century, the most important role, if anybody has to play, is, like by the teachers. And I'm happy in the new national education policy also, the government has, recognized, and the government is unmindful of the fact that without having, such a vast pool of teachers, we can't achieve anything, what has been listed in NSP in any way. So what all we need to do, firstly, I'll talk about I think what the government should do and what government can do. Talking about the policies, I think the government policies pertaining to teachers training, pertaining to teachers recruitment, pertaining to their promotion, pertaining to their, service matters, like we are talking of making the teaching profession more lucrative, like you're talking, Raghav was talking about, like in countries like Finland, teachers are one of the most, preferred choices for any youngster, studying in college or university. So if you go in any Indian college or university or school for that matter, and if you, just firstly ask, the students in a class, so what do you want to become? Fine. So just check out that, how many of them will, stand up and say, I want to become a teacher. Hardly, one or two in a class, that also I'm doubtful. So I mean, the government policies, will play a, a key role. Yes, we need to make teaching profession more lucrative, so that, the youngsters are drawn towards, to become teachers. And we were talking about the reverence and respect for teachers. I personally believe that, still teachers are respected, still principals are respected. But, I think only good teachers are respected now, not everybody across the board. Good teachers are still respected. They are accorded, they are like the, in a family, they are the most important person outside the immediate family. So we need to, ensure that, teachers, teaching becomes more lucrative, and what steps can be done, for their training to make teaching more lucrative. There can be so many ways, and the government is also rightly thinking about it, like incentive and rewards mechanism. I think the motivation level needs to be, like especially during this pandemic time, when teachers, like they are taking care of the virtual education, online education, they have to take care of family, they have to take care of administrative works, they have to get into the training also. I think the motivation level of the teachers have to be very, very high, for which, like every organization, not in the government, because the government will honor them once in a year on the teachers day. So we need to work out more ways and means that, how we can offer them more incentive and rewards, for the welfare, like what we have done in our schools. There are a lot of children, with small babies and little kids. So in all our schools, we have set up mothers lab, so that teachers, they can bring their small infants, babies, and, like children in formative stage to the school itself, and they are well taken care of in the school campus only, so that they are not bothered, what is happening, who's taking care of them, back home. So even the, like things like, we've started cafe in our schools, we opened gyms in our schools. So they can lot of, activities and, welfare measures like this, they can be, mooted in a school. The induction process, I think if we have to make teaching more lucrative, the induction process has to be, streamlined. And, courses like, and the government, is rightly working on the restructuring of the, NTSC also, and they are setting up the national professional standard for teachers, which I think will come into being in 2020. NCT is already working on it, and NCT has been recognized as a professional standard setting body under the General Education Council for the teachers. So we all know that, what are the B.Ed colleges doing. So the entire restructuring of teachers training, inducting teachers into the education system is extremely important. And, earlier, when the government had launched NCT, we saw mushroom of B.Ed colleges all over the country. But, that proved to be a very fertile, because there was no emphasis on the quality, pedagogy, technology in these B.Ed institutes. And I believe by 2030, the government is, like trying to bring up a 4-year integrated, a B.Ed course for the teachers, and not only 4-year integrated B.Ed teachers training course. The government is also coming up, 2-year course, 1-year course, and, some shorter programs also. So I think, at the national level and then at the state level and the regional level, the bodies like, NCT and the regional teachers training body, they will be playing a very, very vital role. Organizations like, CBSE, they have already set up the centers for excellence at the regional level, which are doing a wonderful job, offering them, face-to-face and online training. So I mean, in terms of their motivation level, in terms of offering them awards, incentives, in terms of their training, talking about the welfare measures, we can also, make, offer free insurance to the teachers. Like now the government is coming up with vaccine. Teachers can be, one of the, preferred professionals, who can be offered free vaccination by the government. So all these steps, I think, ultimately will make the teaching profession more relevant, more lucrative, more attractive. I'm not talking about the salaries, remuneration, transfer policy. Like Punjab has come up with a beautiful, online transfer policy for the teachers. And, it's very important that, the vertical mobility of teachers should also be taken care of, wherein, outstanding teachers, with demonstrated leadership, skills should be trained, and they should be further taken to further training to take over the leadership roles. Not every teacher who has a 10 to 15 or 20 years of teaching experience should be put in a leadership role. So we had also proposed the government to set up a National Institute of School Leadership also, because we will have good teachers only when we have good leaders. A leader is a good leader who creates good leaders. So that is, I think, extremely important. And I am also of the opinion, to bring in a lot of professionals into, into training. Like, we have introduced artificial intelligence. So we have tied up with some university, where the professors of university are not only hand-holding our teachers who are imparting the artificial intelligence knowledge to the students, even, the professors are also directly training the, students in our schools. Why can't doctors teach biology to the students in the school? So we can open it up to a lot of professionals coming into the school and taking up the teaching role. So I think one, talking about if I talk about the quantity, a very well structured approach by the government, good strategies, good policies, so that lot of people they get into, they are drawn towards the teaching, and then their induction and training and their qualification. We have introduced TET or CTET and all these exams. What we see the result, it's 1%, 2%, 3% of the people who are existing in the teaching role, they are able to clear that test. So we need to re-strategize and restructure the entire teachers training, teachers education. We need to work out the need for given the rise in population which we are going to witness, that how many teachers will be required. So it has to be the demand and supply has to be worked out, and it's high time that like in case we want the NEP is very aspirational, it's very ambitious policy. But I think if we are able to take care of the teachers training, given the diversity of the country, where we have a school in one canal also, and we have a school in 10 acres also, wherever school with 500 rupees monthly fee, wherever school with 50,000 monthly fee, wherever school in rural hinterland, in the remote and backward areas, we have school in metropolitans and bigger towns. So given the diversity of the country, given the need, the projections for next 10 years, the government need to restructure the entire mechanism for the induction, for the training, making it more lucrative. Government should not ask the teachers to get into some other administrative roles, like we see during the elections, teachers are sent home to home to or in the public distribution system. Sometimes the teachers end up get onto the streets. So all these things they need to be avoided. And when it comes to private organizations, like what we can do, I have seen a lot of school heads, promoters, they do not encourage their teachers to get into the training or to participate in various online and face-to-face training sessions, because of the fact that at times they have a kind of insecurity. If my teacher is trained, he or she will leave my organization. So that mindset has to be changed. The heads, the owners, the promoters, even if you train a teacher and that teacher goes to some other school or college, ultimately, we are working on, for the welfare of the society. Some child somewhere will be benefited out of that trained teacher. So, the schools have to, work out with an open mind, with a very, very positive framework, and set up their own in-house policies for the on-the-job training, for the, aligning the teachers, to the needs of the century, to the need of the hour, while we are talking about critical thinking, design thinking, collaborative skills, we are talking of coding, design thinking, problem solving skills. So, and then, other traits like soft skills, interpersonal skills. So I think we need to have a very well framed, robust in-house mechanism. Every organization, group of schools have already, started working on setting up their own in-house teacher training centers. And schools should not, prevent the teachers from, upskilling them, or, gaining higher education, or getting them trained just because of, looking into the, attrition aspect. So that mindset at the, private bodies also needs to be changed. And, what this pandemic has taught us, and, what I have seen in the last few months, lot of organizations, public sector undertakings, NGOs, a lot of self-help groups, and lot of other, commercial entities also, they have ventured into teachers training, and some of them are doing fabulous work, wonderful work. You want to have a 1 week long training or any aspect, right from classroom management to the, something to do with technology or special education, you just Google it, you'll find numerous courses by various organizations, on that particular aspect. So the private, sector has already, kind of taken up this initiative to venture into teachers training. The school heads, the principals, the owners, the promoters, they also need to take up, this aspect very, very seriously. And, the government, as I'm mentioning again, the government has also, re-strategize and restructure the entire induction training, like we were talking of multidisciplinary approach. So I've been told, and I have read that, few months, few years down the line, the teachers education, rather than training for a specific subject, it's also going to be, training in a multidisciplinary aspect. And, in the end, talking about, making the teaching profession more lucrative. Yes, it's a known fact that, in large number of schools in India, the salaries are not very high, especially in the private schools, where the fee structure is low. Even despite of the best of intentions, the school cannot give, very high remuneration. Fine. So that is, a known fact, However, I firmly believe that, we all think that, children are the creation of the God. So I often tell my teachers that, God tells you that you take care of my kids and I'll take care of yours. So I have yet to come across any good teacher whose children are not doing well. So, there is no point of having abundance of money if your children are not doing well. So that is, one silver lining in this profession, that, any honest teacher, sincere teacher you will come across, you see the children are doing extraordinarily good. So I mean, we need to look at not only at the monetary aspect. The teachers, they need to look at, any other, all these other aspects also. The kind of respect, the kind of popularity, the kind of, if you are a good teacher, you are learning new technology, your immediate family, your relatives, you go anywhere in the society, you are respected. Oh, wow, that's my ma'am. And teaching is mother of all professions, that we should all know. So the government, the private sector, the PSUs, and NGOs, we all need to, put our effort together, if we want to really, if we are serious about bringing paradigm shift in the way, we look at the education in India, and we want to take India, at a global stage, in terms of already, the Indian K-12 system is the largest in the world. So if we are keen that it's not only the quality, the Indian quality is also the best, while talking about K-12 segment, then I think, the teachers are the key to success, and they are our real heroes. and we need to really work on them. Thank you. Ma'am, you have to unmute yourself.
I have not muted myself at all.
Okay. Yes, yes.
Can you hear me? All right. I can definitely say that yes, the leaders have to be trained. If we as leader or the head of the schools are not trained, we cannot give direction to our teachers. And you will be pleased to know that the Sarv Siksha Abhiyan and all this were flop because the leaders were not trained, only teachers, and what they were doing, they were directionless
Speed of
at
the
point
engine
of
is
time.
the speed of the
So
train.
state government.
I say speed of the engine. Speed of the engine is the speed of the
Pardon?
train. So if you have a good leaders, you will have good teachers.
Right, right. So you will be pleased to know that the state governments and central government have come out with 3 modules where heads of the schools and principals can also train themselves in this particular direction, which is I welcome that move. Now quickly I will move to my next panelist, Mr. Rikrit Sarai. Sir, another important aspect of future-proofing the school learning ecosystem is changing the way we assess students' growth and development. At present, the majority of the schools in India practice traditional way of assessment that focus on an extremely narrow set of skills such as ability to recall and attempt a specific type of questions. But 21st century skills such as creative, critical thinking, complex problem solving, social and communication, ability to work in a team do not figure in the assessment criteria, even though these skills are in high demand in the job market. So, in your view, how should we approach redefining the assessment criteria to make the assessment system more holistic, inclusive, and relevant? How do we ensure that students' overall progress is evaluated on a broader spectrum of metrics as opposed to the current practice? Mr. Rikrit, please.
Wonderful question. Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think this is a very relevant question that you asked because it's one of the major issues that we face as educators on a daily basis right now. But I would just like to come back to some of the points that were raised over the last few minutes by the panelists as well. Like if I'm right, Raghav had spoken about jobs as well, and Ani had spoken about the plight of educators, and that was just when I joined in the session. I think that we have to look backward, and then we particularly got to work backward as well. Currently, what we're doing is that we've framed our education system, and this isn't just for India. I think it's for the whole world. I think that we framed our education system based on history and based on the past. The current education system in different parts of the world, and particularly now in India, because since we're a growing nation, it has to be based on the future. And jobs of the future are one of the things that we have to keep in mind. We talk about various current professions that we have. It's well known that we've got engineers and doctors and lawyers, and then we train our kids for AIEEE, for JEE, and for CLAT and stuff for that. But the job market is definitely going to change over the last few years, and over the next few years, and we've seen glimpses of that during the current crisis that we find ourselves in. A student who has just entered the education system, the K-12 education system, is going to graduate, I think, in the year 2033 or 2034. The world is entirely going to change by then. I've spoken about this in the past as well, that we're particularly going to have autonomous cars. AI would have taken over a lot of the functions that we perform, a lot of the menial tasks. We aren't training our kids for that. Suddenly, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of craze around certain aspects of the future, and there are two particular things that I'm going to talk about first, and then I'll of course come to the question that you asked. There are two phenomena that we have witnessed during the lockdown. First of all, is that edtech is the new Bitcoin, particularly because this is the gold rush for edtech now. Secondly, coding seems to be it's a solution for everything wrong in the world. So I think that when we talk about the future, and when we particularly talk about the future of education, I think we've got to move beyond these two things. Um, so what is the future, and how is the future going to pan out for students? Of course, there will be AI. Of course, there will be AR, VR, MR, and blockchain, and so on and so forth. But what are the kind of jobs that you're going to see? Data junkies. We're particularly talking about blockchain architects. We're talking about MR builders. We're talking about a lot of work that revolves around data, that revolves around tech. Now, honestly, a lot of us will have various innovation departments in our school, and I think that we dabbled with all the tech that we can lay our hands on. But how many of us as school leaders are actually taking out time to understand the changing trends, and how are we and are we actually trying to train our educators and students about these points? And so I think that the future is only possible if we train ev- everyone in the present for the future. So our curriculum needs to revolve around that. So it cannot just be one or two aspects. I think it's a total mindset change, and the mindset change can only take place when, in the current trainings that we impart to educators, in the current training modules, I think that we've got to include a lot of these points. Now, the crisis over the last 9 months has taught us a lot of things, and as you rightly said, I think change is the only constant. But I've really got to congratulate the teachers in the classrooms who have, they've been thrown into the deep end of the ocean, and they've been asked to swim, and no one's really thought about them much. And it's just a phenomenal job that they're doing. But we haven't been able to train them. Then we haven't been able to keep up pace as well. I am very proud to say that the educators in our group of schools, of course, I'm pretty sure that they understand Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and a lot of other things better than me even. And till a few months ago, I was the tech leader over here. So things have changed very, very fast, and I think it's the teachers who have taken the mantle. And I think we should, as school leaders, I think we should listen to the educators in the classroom, and I think that we should understand where the problem actually lies and form assessment programs around that. So one instance that I'll just share is that suddenly I've seen over our group of schools, at least, but then amongst other chains that I've spoken to over the last few months as well, that suddenly uh, students aren't getting E or F grades anymore, or like even D's in this instance. Like kids are getting better grades is because most of the assessments that we have are open book assessments now. So the assessment system itself was devised over the fact is that it's based on knowledge. It isn't based on the implementation of knowledge. So even if you look at the board examinations, and if you've seen the sample question papers of the board that have come recently for class 10th and even for class 12th as well, there are some case studies that I'm seeing over there, but even those case studies are particularly based more on theory rather than the practical information. Like if you do a simple Google search over a few lines of those case studies, and then you'll find the answer. So I think the only way in which we can change our education system and different systems in different parts of the world is that if we focus more on how can we practically apply what is taught in the classrooms. This is something that we've spoken about a lot over the last few years, but I think that now it is the need of the hour, and the assessment programs should be based on a consequence which is basically which in turn is based on practical teaching in the classrooms. So there are two stakeholders in the education system which we don't particularly think about much. So that's the student and the educator. So the more we train them, the more we expose them to various skill sets of the future. I think that's how the whole education system in India can change.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable comments. I would like to just add the assessment should be, in fact, assessment as learning, assessment for learning, and then finally assessment of learning. If we follow these three stages, it will become 360-degree assessment for a child, which will be fruitful. We had a wonderful round of the first set, but somewhere we have crossed our time. It's already 12:43. I will request the host to give me the time till 12:50. So I'll have 7 or 8 minutes. If each of you can finish your answer within a minute and a half, it will be good for all of us. I have not interrupted you in the first set, but second set, after 2 minutes, I will have to say sorry. And then I will move to next panelist. So with that, this is 12:44, and I directly move to my first panelist, Mr. Prajod Rajan. Sir, NEP 2020 aims to accomplish gross enrollment ratio of 50% by 2035, significantly higher from the current figure of about 26%. So in your experience as an active leader in the education sector, what are some of the hurdles in meeting this target and how we might overcome them? What local reforms and programs could we put in place to increase GER? Your time starts now.
Okay, Dr. Pathak, I'll be very brief on this then. The gross enrollment ratios, or the GER as we call it, I think firstly, one must compliment what we've achieved so far. I think what we've achieved so far is that, especially when it comes to the primary years, which is, let's say, grade 1 to grade 4 or grade 5, we've reached near universalization there. So there, our ratios are very good and as close to as 100%. So most of our 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds are in school. The issue really takes place post grade 6 and grade 9. Those are where the issues really take place. So one is, I think we've done a good job, at least in getting our primary kids to school. One must realize that. Now let's look at the gross enrollment ratio target of about, let's say, getting to about 50%. Now the goal for NEP 2020 is to get to 50% by 2035, which means we've got 15 years. If we trace back, in the last 8 years, we moved from 20.5 to 26, which means about 5.5%. If we continue with the same rate of growth, then we will only be able to achieve 3/4 of it per se there, which means that something has to change to make this possible. If we have to make the goal of 50% possible, something has to change. And what really would be the measures of change, if you ask me? One is, of course, the resource that the government also spends on education, which is currently at 3%. All along, many of us, including all of us, I guess, have been speaking about that 3% going to 6%. So one, clearly the the money that the government spends on GDP this has to go from 3 to 6%. The second, and I kind of call that out to say, private participation is absolutely essential to be able to meet these goals. You have to create capacities. Those capacities cannot be created, which is seats, cannot be created by the government alone. Do welcome private players which have deep pockets, great intentions in the greater good of the nation.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so much, sir.
That.
I've moved to my next panelist, Mr. Raghav Poddar. It is well established fact that early childhood care and education plays a critical role in determining a person's prospects in adulthood. However, ECCE has been largely absent from serious discussions. Given this and the fact that India is a vast country with large socio-economic disparities, what challenges are we likely to face as we try to institute ECCE across schools in the nation?
Right. I think the biggest challenge is mindset, because the Indian cultural mindset towards early years, towards the years of 1.5 to about 5.5, has been that, oh, it's just child's play time. They should just be doing cool kale. So the idea of ECC Ed coming into the NEP itself was a very promising step. It's recognized the much deserved recognition that it deserved for more than a decade, or much, much more than that. You cannot build a strong superstructure on a weak foundation. If you want a strong tree that can weather all the storms, what does it need? Strong roots. They say about 90% of the child's brain development happens in the first 6 years of the child's life. That's how important the first 6 years are. Again, going back to Finland, I was speaking to these teachers in the staff room of a preschool, and I asked them, so what's your qualification? They said, we're PhDs. I said, you're PhDs and you're teaching preschool. In India, that's unheard of. If you're a PhD, you'll be teaching university level. They're like, why would we do that? I said, why not? They're like, we can make the biggest difference in the lives of the children in the first 6 years. That is where we want to use our skills and our services and our talents. And that's such a wonderful thought. So ECC Ed is extremely important. The mindset shift of changing it from just playing around, the children just dancing around. Yes, they can learn in a playaway manner. There's absolutely no problem with that. But there's a lot of science and learning that happens behind that play. So that's extremely important. The mindset shift is what the biggest challenge is, and I'm sure that we will overcome it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I move to my next panelist, Mr. Anirudh Gupta. To implement effective and impactful ECC across entire nation, we need a fleet of professionals. Now, how might we undertake teachers training on such a large scale? And how could we design and implement such programs in communities across the country, sir?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, as Raghav said, I think we are extremely glad that the government of India has recognized the importance of, ECC, early childhood care and education. So earlier, even the, Ministry of Child and Family Welfare had also, mooted some, conditions or prerequisites that, what a playway school should be all about. So what has happened that over the years, we have not taken early childhood care in India very seriously. In every street and corner, one room has been converted into a play school, and untrained teacher has been asked, take care of the children. Where we understand that 85% of the child's cumulative brain development occurs prior to the age of 6. So how important it is, this time, we all recognize, and if you're giving a child into hands of an untrained teacher at this stage, so sometimes it can done permanent damage to child's creativity and learning. So extremely important that whatever changes have been brought in, and your 5+3+3+4 structure in the NEP, I think, if implemented in the right manner, in right way, it will bring a lot of good in this particular segment. And, as another point my co-panelist said, we've been trying to fix a square peg in a round hole. We've been asking the teachers, to train the children of, of that stage where the teacher itself is not trained, it's not, clear about, what kind of training has to be imparted. So teachers training is very important for early childhood care. The parental awareness is very important. Sometimes, parents are doing certain thing to please the child, which is a big no technically or scientifically. So Anganwadi structure, if I talk about children from the socioeconomic disadvantaged groups, the Anganwadi structure needs to be reformed by the government, because majority of the children are, going to the Anganwadis in our country. There are very, very few percent of children, coming to this play schools. So it's good that, the government has recognized, and, I just look forward to, a lot of teachers, going through professional training before, ultimately, getting in touch with the children of this age. And parents should also, go through orientation programs, webinars, seminars to understand what are the do's and don'ts of parenting for the children of this age.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I quickly move to my next panelist, Mr. Rikrit Sarai. So schools are a natural venue for introducing such educational programs, as they are well known in the local community and usually the required personal infrastructure. However, in the majority of the country, we have not yet accepted the idea of schools undertaking activities beyond prescribed syllabus. So what changes would we need to bring in the mindset of school administration? I'm focusing here even on administration and teaching staff, so as to ensure their active participation in implementation of ECCE.
Right. Wonderful question again. I would particularly just want to add to what the speakers have spoken about as well. All of these things can be linked to regulation in education in India. I think particularly most of the regulation that we have, it isn't growth oriented. So particularly if the regulatory bodies give us little more elbow room in terms of functioning, I think that a lot of innovative ideas can come up from schools in India. As Prajot also mentioned as well, that since was mentioned the NLP that we're going to push up the GER from 26% currently to 50%. That practically means opening, if you look at a span of 15 years, it means that we've got to open 50 new schools and one university in India every single week. The regulatory framework itself is so prohibitive that even opening a school isn't considered a very lucrative opportunity from various investors. So I think I think if the regulatory bodies particularly allow private players to function the way they want to, and rather than trying to regulate, if they if they can recommend and if they allow us to function particularly as we deem fit, I think a lot of things can happen, and then there can be like a drastic change in education in India. But it all stems down to this in the end, I feel.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. It was a wonderful discussion. You all have shared your wonderful views. I believe it was a great learning platform. I would like to wrap up this session with my concluding remark. But before that, I would like to thank each one of you from the bottom of my heart, and also to the elite for giving us this wonderful platform. And I wish to wrap up this with my concluding remark that as educators and leaders, we have been given the unique mandate to shape the minds and lives of the youth, and thereby the future of this nation. As we move forward with a vision, we must be mindful of far-reaching impact of our ideas, decisions, and policies will have on the lives of the youth and on the socio-economic well-being of our country for decades to come. Therefore, it behooves us to leverage our influence and creativity in this difficult time of crisis to help reshape our education system in a manner that would help the youth to realize their potential, give their lives a purpose and meaningful employment, and propel the nation towards a better future. We all can do it together. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandrakanta. Thank you, every panelist, for giving your precious time to 17th World Education Summit and exploring your ideas on future-proofing school learning ecosystem, leveraging innovation to reinvent. Thank you, Raghav sir. Thank you, Anil sir. Thank you, Prajot sir. Thank you, Rika sir. A small token of appreciation speaker certificate is provided from our side. And I request Rajeshwar to share the speaker certificates to our speaker, to Dr. Chandrakanta R. Pathak. And thank you, Chandrakanta ma'am, for giving your time to the World Education Summit. Rajeshwar, can you share the speaker certificate on the screen? I think it's ending.
No
And-
issue. It's so nice of you, Mr. Abhishek Toma. We
Thank you.
all welcome this, and we will look forward to receive this certificate via a digital
Yes,
platform.
we are sending on via email also and via courier also. And thank you, Raghav sir, for giving your precious time for the 17th World Education Summit. Thank you, Prajot sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anil sir, for giving your time for 17th World Education Summit. And we are looking forward for the such nice session and to explore the innovation in school education through our summits and through your ideas. Thank you, Rika Sai sir. Thank you, Dr. Chandrakanta ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very, very much to elites and dear. Thank you.